I'm so grateful, first and foremost, to our incredible group of speakers. You guys are really in for a treat tonight. My name is Jane Grossman, and I am the Vice Chair of Northern Nevada Marches Forward. Our organization is an inclusive, volunteer-led organization with a mission to support, spotlight, and uplift the voices and power of diverse people and communities to create transformative change. Our organization is best known for sponsoring the Reno Women's March. We started hosting the march in 2017, and I believe that Reno might be the last city that's held a march every year since that time. And many of the people who got that going are on this call, and many of the people on this call have been our speakers. So thank you so much. Next year, we will host the Women's March in the month of March to honor Women's History Month. This winter, we started our education and action forums with local leaders discussing critical issues affecting all of us in Nevada. So far, we've discussed anti-Semitism, climate change, the intersections of gender-based violence, and the illusion of inclusion and systemic racism. And we held an LGBTQ plus ally training. And all of these past forums are on our website. Well, most of them, they will be very soon. Tonight, we're talking about what women want. It's not complicated, but I believe you will quickly see as you start hearing from our speakers, our topics tonight are what everyone wants, not just women. We ask you to stay on mute and put your questions in the chat. Each of our panelists will speak for about 5 minutes, and then we'll have an open Q&A at the end of our time tonight. Our speakers tonight are legislators and community activists. We all know the quote by Margaret Mead: "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." Tonight, you are going to hear from some of those thoughtful, committed, passionate, and savvy women, because each and every one of them has definitely changed our world in the state of Nevada. And our first speaker really changed the entire country. We are so lucky tonight to have this group. Tonight, we'll start by talking about Nevada ballot questions 1 and 2. Question 1 would enshrine the Equal Rights Amendment into our state constitution. Question 2 will secure a $12 minimum wage into the state constitution. There's a third question about open primaries and ranked choice voting. We won't be talking about that tonight, but hopefully later in October. Both the ballot questions that we are discussing already passed the Nevada State Legislature twice in 2 consecutive sessions. And I'd like to remind everybody on this call that our Nevada State Legislature is the only state legislature in the whole country with a majority of women lawmakers. Go Nevada. Now, to add these initiatives for the ERA and a minimum wage of $12 to our state constitution, it's going to be up to the voters this November, and that's what we'll be learning about. We'll start with the history and the legislative processes that took place to pass both of these pieces of legislation, and you'll learn what you can do to make sure the voters are going to pass these in November. We'll be dropping links into the chat tonight. Then we'll conclude our presentation with the history about how the right to choose became law in Nevada over 20 years ago. And then we'll get an update about reproductive choice in Nevada and the rest of the country and what you can do. So I'm so honored to introduce our first speaker, Zoe Nicholson. And she is an equality activist, author, artist, and speaker. Zoe lives at the intersection of feminism and equality, which has influenced her entire life. She has spent unlimited passion on unions, peace, civil rights, LGBTQ+, feminism, and equality. In 1982, Zoe joined 6 women in the state capital of Springfield, Illinois, in a public and political fast for 37 days in support of the Equal Rights Amendment. Among her 5 books is her ERA journal, The Hungry Heart, A Woman's Fast for Justice. Zoe currently appears in the 2022 documentary, Still Working 9 to 5, and a 2019 PBS series, We'll Meet Again with Ann Curry. Most proudly, Zoe was given the National Organization for Women 2022 Lifetime Achievement Award. We'll put Zoe's link in the chat so you can learn more about her. Zoe, thank you for joining us here in Nevada.
That's the first time I've heard that out loud.
Well, it's wonderful.
Does that mean I get to retire now that I got a Lifetime Achievement Award?
No.
I'll send the award back rather than do that. I'm not going to stop. I want you to understand that in 1920, to close the deal on the 19th Amendment, there was great pressure because Western states had given women the vote. And that's really important. I mean, in these women in the Western states having the vote, they dispelled this crazy idea that women wouldn't care, they weren't smart enough, they wouldn't show up. Why give women the vote anyway? I'm sure Jeanette Rankin would like to explain that to them, our first woman in Congress. But you have something really precious in your hands right now. It's a new thing. Nevada must be a very special place because not only did you reinvigorate the ERA after it was asleep since 1977, but now you are going to join the 26 states that have an ERA to pressure the national movement to say, look, we already know how important this is. So what I want to leave you with today is one simple moment. It's the moment that inspires me above all other moments. And that's where it all started. That time when Alice fell off her horse on the road to Damascus. Alice Paul was a Quaker girl who graduated from Swarthmore, and a teacher, whose name was Robert Brooks, had told her that he thought that she really wasn't meant to spend a lifetime in a classroom teaching botany, but he wanted her to go and do what changes people's lives, which is go and meet the poor. And when people go and they meet the poor for the very first time, Oscar Romero wrote about it and died for it. Gerda Lerner, it's in her autobiography. Dorothy Day writes about it. That very first time when inequality bowls you over. But what's really exceptional about Alice Paul is she had this epiphany of what we needed to do as a country. And she was serving a year, I hope you can see this, working in a settlement house in Lower Manhattan. It's still there today. There it is today. And Eleanor Roosevelt had worked there 3 years before in 1903. Alice was there in 1906. It's at 95 Rivington Drive. And she was confronted with Irish immigrants, Italian immigrants, and Eastern European Jewish immigrants coming in. This was a settlement house, their first experience interacting with Americans. And she thought and saw that without equality under the law, these people would never have a chance. They would never, wages wouldn't matter piecemeal, going to classes, learning to dance, how to cook, renting an apartment, until we had full equality under the law. Men and women would be unequal. So that's this precious egg you carry forward, this knowing that you get to make that happen a second time in Nevada, really, how spectacular, and carry it forward in this national uprising that we finally settle this issue once and for all, that all people must be equal under the law. And thank you so much for this really fast 5 minutes. Thank you.
Zoe, we're so delighted to have you. And I put Zoe's website in the chat. You can learn more about her. She does a one-woman show. She's in movies. She's just really a pioneer, and we stand on your shoulders. And the next woman we're going to hear from is Dr. Pat Spearman, Senator Spearman. She is an American cleric, veteran of the U.S. Army, and current state senator from District 1 in North Las Vegas. In 2017, Dr. Spearman introduced and successfully navigated the passage and ratification of the Equal Rights Amendment, making Nevada the 36th state to vote to ratify the 1972 ERA. She was also successful at introducing and passing the Equal Pay for Equal Work Bill, Senate Bill 293 in Nevada in 2021. She has worked tirelessly with the community and on bills that provide protection and/or support for women and families, clean energy, small business, workforce development, LGBTQI community, veterans, victims of domestic violence, and various issues having to do with social and criminal justice reform. Senator Spearman, you're going to go down you're already in the history books here, and we're so grateful for everything you've done for our state, and you got that ERA through. So please tell us about that journey.
Thank you. And I'm always embarrassed when people read all that stuff. Just know that I'm a social justice warrior, and I don't quit. I am honored to be a panelist with Zoe. I mean, you have no idea how much you inspire me, how much your story inspires me. And I admire you. I'll just put it like that. I really do. Thank you for all you've done. So I want to talk about the question one. The Nevada State ERA, and let me read to you what it says. It's very simple. Shall the Nevada Constitution be amended by adding a specific guarantee that equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by this state or any of its cities, counties, or other political subdivisions on account of race, color, creed, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, age, disability, ancestry, or national origin. And if you look at that, that is so very inclusive. So let me tell you how we came about with this. And I always say, you should really be careful what you ask for sometime, because you just might get it. In 2015, when we first brought the ERA, ratification bill, they heard it in committee and they refused to move it out of committee. So it didn't pass. And my commitment to those who had worked so hard to get it done was help me get reelected. And I promise you this would be among the first bills that we pass. And it was. And so then we opened up the door for everybody along the federal, in the federal ERA. But while we were doing that, we were chastised by some of our counterparts on the other side of the aisle who said, well, you all are trying to get this federal thing done and we don't even have an ERA in the state. And again, I say, be careful what you ask for. The now majority leader and I sat next to each other in the Senate, and as soon as we heard that, we looked at each other and said, bet. And so, we determined from that time forward, this is what we were going to do. We were going to bring it up again in 17. And unfortunately, we couldn't get it through in 17, but we were able to get it done in 19 and 21. So according to Nevada, to the Constitution, when you're going to change the Nevada Constitution, it has to be 2 consecutive legislative sessions. And so if we had passed the state ERA in 17, but didn't do it in 19, we would have had to start all over in 21. Some of the, one of the most recent examples of that is the marriage equality amendment. We passed it in 2013, but we lost both houses in 15, so we had to start all over again in 17. Another one is the lifting the HAVA acts out of statute and putting them into our Constitution. We tried to get it done in 15, but they wouldn't let us. And so we were able to get it done in 17 and brought it back again in 19, and in 20, it was on the ballot. So that's the process, the legislative process to get any amendment done. So now we have this equal rights amendment, state equal rights amendment. And if you look at it, it is the most progressive ERA in the state, in the nation, the most progressive. And this is what happens when women are in charge. So somebody wants to say, you know what happens when women are in charge? Check out Nevada, okay? when you look into the thesauruses and it says what happens when women are in charge, you see a picture of the Nevada state legislature because we really got it done. Our ERA, state ERA, is on the ballot this time, and it must pass. It must pass. Otherwise, we have to start all over again. Somebody says, why is it important to put it in the Constitution? It's important because statutes can be changed from one legislative session to another, because one legislature cannot bind succeeding legislatures. When we stop and we think about that, the equal pay bill that we got passed in 2019 with the help of Patricia Arquette, if we lost both houses, God forbid, they could come back and undo that. But once we pass the state ERA, that will also be written in law. It brings equality, shall not be denied or bridged on account of all of these things. It's important to do that, even because we have those who are differently able, those people who are aging, those people, sexual identity, sexual orientation, sexual expression, all of those things matter. And we know that today, in the political climate that we're in today, these types of rights are under attack. And if you have listened to what Clarence Thomas said, he wants to go after every right that people have. But once we pass as a state, once upon a time, the other party used states' rights to our detriment. Well, we figured out how to use it to our advancement. And so once it passes, now in the state of Nevada, we will be protected. Midterms matter, midterms matter, midterms matter, midterms matter. If we had not taken back the House in 16 and were able to get this done in 17, if it had gone the way it did in 2014, we would not be having this conversation today. So midterms matter. This is a legislative process that you all helped us get done. And I want to say this, you may see our name on the bill, but everybody had a part in making sure that this happened. A phone call to us, a phone call to friends, a phone call to somebody. And so now the heavy lifting has to continue. And Zoe, I heard you say you want to retire. Does that mean you want to retire? Well, social justice warriors, we don't retire, we refire, because we who believe in freedom shall not rest until it comes. Thank you.
Senator Spearman, thank you so much. You inspire all of us each and every day, and we just are so lucky that you're a Nevadan. You do so much for our state. Thank you. So I'd like to introduce now Jerry Burton, who is the director of Nevada Organization for Women and co-executive director. Sorry about that, Jerry. And she is a lifelong progressive activist. She's been at this for a while. She previously served on NOW's national board representing the Western District, and she works every day to achieve equal rights for all. She's a mom, a grandmother, a wife, and a native Nevadan, and so much more. And Jerry, we are so delightful you're on this panel. And please let us know how we're gonna get the voters to pass this bill so we don't have to go back to the starting gate.
Well, so thank you so much for inviting me. And I have to tell you, it is amazing to be following two of my mentors and friends. The reason I'm involved with the Equal Rights Amendment is because of the two previous speakers that I've continued to do. They lit my torch years and years ago. So we do have a heavy lift. They've done the work to get us here. Senator Spearman, they passed the bill, and we now have it on the ballot. So it's up to us to do the activism. And so that is a heavy lift, Senator Spearman, you're right. So we have a lot of things planned, some really fun things planned for the campaign. I wanted to point out that Betty Stevens has just become the new campaign manager for the state ERA ballot initiative. I believe they're on the call. So we'll be working in coalition, and we're really excited about that. So I'm with the Nevada chapter of the National Organization for Women, and this is a core issue. Equality, obviously, is a core issue for the National Organization for Women. And we helped, we testified for the bill and helped Senator Spearman and the legislators get this on the ballot. And now we need your help. We need everyone to get involved. We're gathering volunteers to help in lots of different ways. I'll put a volunteer form in the chat. There's lots of ways to get involved. We'll be knocking doors, writing postcards. We're planning events around the state. A lot of us are in Las Vegas, but we've got members up in Reno. We're going to be looking at sharing social media. There's already a website for the state ERA ballot initiative. And then Nevada Now has had a few events to bring attention to the ballot initiative. So, and you can also give money to the Equal Rights Nevada.com. I'll put that in the chat as well, because it'll take some money to get this thing passed, but we need your help. And so think of the ways that you want to get involved, whether you're in Las Vegas or in Reno. In Las Vegas, we at Nevada Now have an event coming up on August 26th that Senator Spearman will be speaking at. We're celebrating Women's Equality Day, but we're also talking about the work that needs to be done to guarantee equality for all and our state ERA. We have Lieutenant Governor Lisa Cano Burkhead and other Nevada Now PAC endorsed candidates will be speaking. So we'll be signing up volunteers for the ballot initiative, raising money for to elect more equality candidates. As Senator Spearman said, the reason this is on the ballot is we do have the first female majority legislature, and we want to keep it that way. And we want to all the way, like Senator Spearman always says, all the way down to, not necessarily down to, but school board. So we need equality people everywhere. So we're also excited. We have someone coming to Nevada to help us on she's from the national level. We just met with her last night, Senator Spearman and I did. Kate Kelly is working with Vote Equality. They were formerly VA ratified ERA, and they're gonna wrap a van and ERA art and go up north and have some events and come and be in Las Vegas and have events. So if you know of a parade or a gathering of people, we're gonna be bringing all kinds of ERA swag to hand out and talk to people and hand out information about the state ERA to educate people. So we're having some fun things to do to get people involved, and we could use your help there too. Just watching for social media and helping us share events. From September 17th is when we're going to kind of kick things off with an event with SEIU, and then all the way through election day. So there's lots to do. We need to build the excitement. The state ERA polls really well, but we've got to get out the vote. So we could use your help. And I got the easy part, just getting people, telling people how to get involved. And thanks for inviting me.
Oh, thank you so much. And I do have to put out a little caveat. We are nonpartisan. And so we can't be endorsing candidates tonight. We love our candidates here, and just officially as a nonpartisan organization. So our next speaker, so that's a little bit of a wrap up about ballot question 1. So we heard from Zoe about the history of getting the ERA started in the 70s, and then how we made it happen in Nevada and what we can do to make it pass on the ballot. Now we're going to hear about ballot question 2, and Dr. Sandra Cosgrove is going to give us a little bit of history about minimum wage and where it's been, where it's going. Sandra moved to Nevada in 1986 and raised her family in Las Vegas. She has a PhD in history from UNLV, and she is a history professor at the College of Southern Nevada. She hopes to empower community members through civics education and advocacy action. She is the director. I added this, Sandra, because it's so important. She's the director of a nonprofit called Vote Nevada, and she is busy every week educating Nevadans on various forums and on many, many different topics. So Sandra, we are so delighted to have you here. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. And I'm always happy when people are like, hey, we should know the history about things. Because as a historian, we're like, well, where did this start? Because we got to figure out how to unwind it, or we need to figure out where we need to go. And I'm not going to take too much time, because I think you're all kind of probably know why we have a minimum wage. It was a New Deal reform. But I find with my students, if I ask them what caused the Great Depression, oh, it was the stock market crash. Everybody was buying stock. I'm like, poor people were buying stock. They're like, yeah, everybody was buying stock. And that's why the Depression happened. And that's because history has been manipulated, because they don't want you to talk about the fact that the Great Depression happened because lack of consumption, because people were poor. And that there was a change in the tax structure. So that's when we get capital gains tax. That meant the people that were very rich were, speculating and buying all kinds of stock, but they crushed the unions. They drove wages down. They replaced skilled workers with machines, so that by 1926 or 27, most people could not consume. And that's when they came up with revolving credit. And so by the time the stock market crashed, most people were living paycheck to paycheck. They could not consume. The economy was already going to crash when the stock market went over. And that pulled everything. And then that made it much more entrenched and much deeper. And that's one of the reasons why Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the first thing he did was said, people need jobs. Like right now, people just need jobs. They need to be spending money, get people jobs. But then we also making sure that we don't have a repeat of what happened in the 1920s by saying there needs to be a minimum wage. People should not be poor. You need consumption for capitalism to work. And so that's where we get the minimum wage. And one of the things that's unique about the minimum wage as a federal law, it's one of the few laws that says if the states want to do more, they can. If local areas want to do more, they can. Because usually with federal law, it's like, nope, everybody has to do the same thing. So we're lucky with that it does give us wiggle room as part of the states to increase the minimum wage. We have had a constitutional amendment before, and that's where we said the 2 tiers, and that's where we said we were going to have, if you got health insurance, it could be a little bit lower, if that were not health insurance, a little bit higher. And we said that there should be cost of living increases. But then we found out that a lot of companies were doing kind of bogus health insurance. And so we decided that needed to be taken out. And so if you read question 2 and you read that part of it, that's what it's referring to. But minimum wage helps people not be poor. And so for women, this is vitally important. And that's all I have. So go raising minimum wage. Woo.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much for that historical perspective. And I didn't know, I bought into the myth that it was a stock market crash. So I didn't know it was a wage issue. So thank you for illuminating this.
No, if you're one of my students, that becomes one of the deadly sins. Do not tell me that the Great Depression happened because the stock market crashed, or all of a sudden you're in trouble.
Okay, I'm coming to your history class, Sandra. So our next speaker, we're so lucky to have her tonight, is Assemblywoman Ellen Spiegel. She has served 5 terms in the Nevada Assembly, and in 2019 was the chair of the Assembly Commerce and Labor Committee. It was Ellen's committee bills that both increased the minimum wage, AB 456, and began the process to put minimum wage on this year's ballot, AJR 10. Ellen has been a small business owner for the past 25 years and has 40 years of business experience. She has a degree in consumer economics from Cornell and has lived in Henderson since 2021. And we are lucky to have you here, Ellen. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me here tonight. And it's so hard to follow Dr. Cosgrove because she's always so informative. And actually all of the speakers have been tremendous. But I'm just going to take a minute or two to, I put together a little presentation to explain to everybody what we did in 2019, and because it will help understand what's going on now. So the first thing that we did in 2019 was we put in immediate change to minimum wage. So it was Assembly Bill 456, and Jane, I think, is going to put some URLs into chat for me, because if you want to read the bill, we put direct link to it. So the first thing it did was it increased minimum wage from $8.25 an hour to $9 an hour if the employer does not offer health benefits, or $7.25 to $8 an hour if they did have health benefits. And then we said every year until we get to 2024, we're going to raise it by 75 cents an hour. So it would ultimately land at $12 an hour or $11 an hour. We also took out some unconstitutional exceptions to minimum wage, such as like we used to pay people who are differently abled less. They were able to not even get to the paltry minimum wage that we had. That was ruled unconstitutional, so we took it out of state law. And then we also put into statute some things that were in the Constitution related to remedies, so that if an employer was cheating their employees and there was a lawsuit, people can now get back pay, damages, reinstatement if they lost their jobs, or other kind of relief, including attorney's fees and costs. But we knew that wasn't enough, and that wasn't really enough to help everybody. So at the same time, we also began the process to amend the Constitution's minimum wage provisions. So as everybody knows, you have to go through asking the question 3 times to change the Constitution. So H.R. 10 would amend the Constitution by raising the minimum wage to $12 for everybody, effective July 1, 2024. It would get rid of that 2-tier system, because as Dr. Cosgrove pointed out, there were a lot of employers that were doing things that were kind of shady. And then also because of the healthcare exchange, people and Medicaid, people have the opportunity to have other alternatives that were less expensive than necessarily getting health insurance through their employers. But if their employers offered a benefit, they could then be paying the employees $1 per hour less. We took out the cost of living adjustments that were in the Constitution, because again, it's an outdated method and it really wasn't working. And the last thing that it does, which is kind of interesting, is it guarantees that the minimum wage cannot be lowered by the legislature. And that's an important part, because depending on who's in office and who's there, you can have very different effects. So like Senator Spearman was talking before about how depending on who's in the legislature, you can have different policy provisions. And in fact, even last session, there were legislators who put in submitted bills to actually repeal AB 456 and undo all of the provisions. So it's important to have things in the Constitution to have protections. So again, AJR 10, and again, I put a link up to AJR 10 over here. It passed the legislature in 2019, in 2021, and now it's going to be on the ballot this year. So here's the question. Shall the Nevada Constitution be amended to change the minimum wage? It's pretty straightforward. It's what I just outlined. And coming back and what your vote means, because it gets confusing for people. So a yes vote takes out that 2-tier structure that's there. It increases minimum wage for Nevadans with health benefits. So if you're getting to $11 an hour, all of a sudden you're going to get to $12 an hour. It gets rid of that outdated, ineffective method to increase minimum wage. So right now, the labor commissioner has leeway that they can increase the minimum wage by up to 3%, but it never, ever happens. And not only that, but if inflation is higher than 3%, it's capped at 3%. So this gets rid of that, and it takes away the illusion that it's going to happen automatically. The other thing that it does is it allows the legislature or the federal government to increase the minimum wage. A no vote keeps that 2-tier structure in place. It keeps the existing minimum wage structure in place from 2019's AB 456, which I outlined below. It keeps that current cost of living increase method, which has been ineffective. And the other thing it does is it allows the legislature or federal government to change the minimum wage. So the legislature could actually lower the minimum wage. So it's important to understand the differences and the similarities and what it all means. And that's my piece. I'm always happy to answer questions that anybody has. My phone number is 702-577-2167. I'm always answering my phone. And you can also email me if you'd like, because so thank you.
Wow, that was very comprehensive and clear. So thank you for laying out the differences and especially what a yes vote means and a no vote means. And so Ellen, feel free to drop that information because people may have some questions for you about that if you put that in the chat.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, we are going to hear from Audrey Pearl. She's the Director of Organizing for Make the Road, Nevada. Audrey was born in, help me out, Audrey. I don't want to say the city name, Guerrero?
Acapulco, Guerrero.
Thank you. Mexico. She moved to California when she was 8 days old. She experienced the resource disparities working families face and is now dedicated to creating a better future for her son and the community. Audrey earned an Associates of Arts and Associates of Science at the College of Southern Nevada and a bachelor's degree from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. Audrey started with Make the Road Nevada as a volunteer in 2017. Her work in social justice is focused on the intersectional issues like the environmental and economic equity that negatively impact immigrant communities. In her free time, she enjoys traveling and trying new foods around the world with her son. Audrey, we're so happy you're here to just tell us what you had to deal with trying to live on a minimum wage, especially as a mom.
Thank you so much for the invitation and for the introduction. It was funny to hear my bio kind of read out loud. It's great to be in this space with such amazing, powerful women. I was asked to speak kind of from that community perspective, right? Like putting a face on real lives. I work day to day with the immigrant community specifically. But I mean, I think that this affects all of our communities equally, especially when it comes to women. When we talk about folks that are working really hard, just trying to make ends meet, trying to survive. When we talk about the minimum wage, it's super important to understand that the current minimum wage just makes no sense, absolutely no sense, right? When it comes to, and I think I saw somebody mention it in the chat, right? Like it doesn't make any sense when it comes to inflation, when it doesn't make any sense really, the fact that it's been so difficult to even raise the minimum wage, right? Right now we're advocating for $12, but if you want to just take a second and put it into perspective into what that looks like on a daily basis. Let's think about maybe like a fast food worker that works that minimum wage job, making $12 an hour. That person, let's say she's a mom and she has 2 kids, right? Let's say she wants to feed her children a lunch, even from that very same fast food restaurant that she works at. She would have to work a minimum of 2 hours just to be able to afford that one meal. While I was listening to all the other amazing speakers, I very quickly Googled what the average rent cost is in Northern Nevada. And I did that because a really quick background, we are located in Southern Nevada, but we are looking into doing some more work up in Northern Nevada. We're establishing roots up in Northern Nevada. So definitely expect to hear more from our organization and the work that we do in the community coming soon. But again, I went on to check what the average rent is in Northern Nevada, right? And we're looking at $1,500. I quickly did the math at $12 an hour. If a person works, if this same mother works 40 hours every single week, she is gonna make $1,900 a month, and that is before taxes, right? So that means that mother that is working 40 hours a week, struggling probably with the childcare issue of that's another expense, right? And then on top of that, having to feed her family, having to clothe her family, having to provide all that's necessary, right? Because this is we're talking about bare minimum essentials, right? A roof over her head, the food that her children are going to eat, the food that she's going to eat, being able to buy soap, being able to buy very essential things. If we just do some quick math, we know that it does not add up. When we talk about the minimum wage, we should be talking about the minimum wage that someone can work a full-time job and be able to survive. The current situation right now is that folks that are working minimum wage jobs cannot afford to just work just one job. I know folks that work 2-3 jobs just to survive and to be able to feed their families. So I just wanted to jump on and give a little bit of perspective of what folks are struggling with on a daily basis. When it comes to advocating for a higher minimum wage, I say yes, let's make sure that we are pushing for this ballot initiative and doing all we can to get this conversation going with community members, but we shouldn't stop here. We should continue to advocate for more because $12 is not enough, and neither is 15, and neither is 20. If you just do some really quick math, right, you'll quickly find out that in order for folks to be able to not only survive, but also thrive, we actually need to be really pushing the limits on what we're even thinking. And, you know, we need to continue to really advocate and push for more. We need to continue to organize. It's exciting to see so many faces on here right now. It's a big group of powerful women, right? When we talk about women, we are advocating for women. Something like the minimum wage is for that single mom that I mentioned that had her children and wants to survive. Maybe this person, and as a domestic violence survivor myself, like, it's important that we empower our women to be able to survive and to care for themselves and their families. And one of the ways in which we can do that is making sure that we advocate for a higher minimum wage right now. And so I invite all of you to continue all of the activism and the involvement, because that's really what we need to do, is continue to raise our voices, continue to share our stories, continue to share the experiences that we hold. Because as a community in Spanish, and we say this all the time with our comunidad, con la unión viene la fuerza, which means like we're strengths come in numbers, right? When by ourselves we can only do so much, but when we come together we can really accomplish everything and anything that we put our minds to, especially as women, right? So when we talk about what women want, we want the ability to not only survive, but also thrive. And so thank you all for participating. I encourage you all to continue your journey, to continue staying involved, to vote, keeping it absolutely C3. It's just super important that we do our own civic duty. Those of you that have the ability to vote, someone like myself has yet to achieve that right. So I do always ask that whenever I have the platform or whenever I have the space, that I ask every single one that has that right to vote to really use it. It's a very powerful tool, and it's a way of you not only advocating for yourself, but for those around you as well. So please continue to use your power, engage with some of the other organizations that I saw on here that are also doing amazing work. Keep an eye out for Make the Road Nevada. We're venturing out into Northern Nevada. We do primarily work with immigrant low-income communities, but everyone is welcome to donate and volunteer. We're definitely going to be extending our efforts up into Northern Nevada, into the Spanish-speaking community, making sure that everyone that has the right to vote uses it. And those of us like myself that don't have the right to vote, that doesn't mean that we don't have power and that we can't continue to organize and bring that power back to the people.
Audrey, you are a rock star. We are so happy to have young voices on the panel. And we hope once you get your right to vote, you'll also get the right to run for office. And you've got some amazing mentors right in this panel with you. So we're so happy you're here. Make the Road is an organization, I think you're in 6 states, is that right?
Yes, we are a national organization in the sense that we have Make the Road New York, which is the original Make the Road structure. We're all about uplifting and empowering our communities, specifically our Spanish-speaking immigrant communities. But like I said, we hold everything bilingual to make sure that it's a welcoming space for all. We are in New York, Connecticut, New Jersey, and I hope I didn't miss any. But we're the very first expansion into the West Coast.
You are a rising star, Audrey. We're so lucky to have you here with us. Thank you so much. So we've heard about ballot question 1, ballot question 2. In a minute, I'll drop a little bit more information that's simply on the Secretary of State website and Ballotpedia, so you can read more about it, because neither party is going to do much to promote either of these questions. It's really going to be up to we, the people, to make sure our friends know about the ballot questions and make sure, as Audrey said so eloquently, that they get out to vote. It is really going to be key. Now, I don't know if our next speaker, we're about to move to reproductive rights. Milan Hawkins is here. And has anybody seen her in our room? So Milan is out of the hospital recently and is having a hard time speaking. So she's asked Vivian Leal, another superwoman activist in women's rights, healthcare rights, incredible bicyclist who rides with the MS Society, will read the remarks that Milan prepared. But Milan, if you are here, we hope that you'll come on and say hi. And I will read Milan's bio so you know who was going to be here, and then Vivian will go ahead and read Milan's words. So for those of you who don't know Milan, boy, she's another one whose shoulders we all stand on. She cut her political teeth on the Chicago ward boss politics and has been involved in politics and nonprofit activity everywhere she's lived. She founded Project Survival, an organization in Florida that helped build a modern neonatal center at the University of Miami, Jackson Memorial Hospital, and more recently, she founded and was the executive director for the Nevada and California Diabetes Association. And she got involved in that because her husband was a type 1 diabetic and realized there weren't services. So as you're hearing all of our women here see a problem and they just get involved and make something happen. And 40 years ago, Milan just did that. She worked on a non-binding referendum on the Equal Rights Amendment, which initially lost, but as we heard from Senator Spearman, finally passed in 2019, and the message is persistence pays off. We might not get it the first time, but we just keep at it. And it was Milan and her and a savvy team of organizers who in the late 1980s realized the danger ahead for women. So they drafted and passed Question 7, which to this day protects a woman's right to choose in Nevada. The ballot initiative passed with 63% of the vote. And it's safe to say that without Milan and other fierce and committed women's efforts, women in Nevada would be in the same situation as those who are currently living in states with full or partial abortion bans. Milan will celebrate her 84th birthday on September 25th. So it's never too late to get involved. She is still at it every day. And Milan helped to launch the Women's March back in 2016 here in Reno, and she co-founded this very organization. So Milan, we love you. We hope you're watching or you'll see the recording. And if you are here, come on and say hello. And Vivian, if you'd be kind enough to read Milan's words, that would be wonderful.
It will be my honor, and I'm just going to take you all to story time and read you in Milan's words. Her voice is so much more evocative than mine, but I will do my best. So, how it began. In early May of 1989, my husband and I met for lunch with Mary Gould, director of the Washoe County Library, her husband, and Assemblywoman Vivian Freeman, chair of the Assembly Health and Welfare, and her husband, to discuss possible ways to stop a bill that had been passed by the Idaho Legislature that virtually outlawed all abortion, and a bill draft had already been put into play at the Nevada Legislature and was just waiting for the 1991 session. Because Nevada has the unique ability to do both positive and negative referendum and initiatives, we thought sending feels to see if there would be resistance to doing this or if it will be well received. Vivian reached out to Senator Sue Wagner to feel out the Republicans and to Assemblywoman Jan Evans to work her magic with the Las Vegas legislators and Southern Nevada activists, as well as to Planned Parenthood and others. We learned there would be no opposition from the Republicans, and in fact, Bill Reggio, who at the time controlled the state, said they would all be relieved to never have to deal with the issue again because it took up days every legislative session, and every bill they passed was challenged by the ACLU, and they lost, cost the state a lot of money. In July, in a meeting of ever-interested nonprofit Northern Nevada was convened at Planned Parenthood by the director Luis Banyard de Volo. At our second meeting, Joni Kaiser, founder and ex-director of the Committee to Aid Abused Women, made a motion to hire me as the campaign coordinator. In phase one, it was decided we would go for an initiative to reaffirm the NRS that protects our row, NRS 442-250. All we had to do was file the organization, develop the petition language so it would hold up against any challenge, and start circulating the petition and gather the signatures of 10% of registered voters in every county. That was all. You cannot do this with volunteers alone. Thanks to generous donors, we had paid professional petition gatherers. On Christmas Day, our Reno office was broken into and all our computers were stolen. But they never found the petitions because we never kept them on the site. And we did remember about password protections and backups. We lost nothing, just had a mess to clean up. We also hired a Southern Nevada coordinator who decided to hire her friend at the same salary. But more on that another time. Maggie Tracy did saint duty, keeping the peace between the North and the South. The wars would take up a whole chapter, though through all of it, Maya Miller, who was the mother of us all, kept us on track with her most amazing ability to give us the strength to carry on. I hope you're all getting the picture. It was women meeting just like we are now, just like this. And Dr. Jean Glick became a fundraiser extraordinaire. Dr. Glick operated the only abortion clinic in Northern Nevada at the time. In early May, North and South, with much press, we turned in the petitions to each respective county for validation. We had collected the most signatures of any petition effort up to that point in the state. Phase 2. Now the serious work of the campaign began. We hired an excellent company who had run and won on this issue before. We fired the 2 Southern Nevada coordinators and went on to find a knowledgeable person to manage the state. Sad to say that didn't work out, but we persisted, all kinds of lessons learned. We found out we couldn't count on the National Pro-Choice Coalition because the ACLU at the time didn't support the way we were doing what we were doing. But thanks to Louise Nation, Planned Parenthood came through with the money we needed to turn the signatures into a cable mailer. We healed the rift between the North and the South. Our ad team developed brilliant copy and TV, and we had the money for a statewide media blitz. For the last push, I traveled through all of Northern Nevada, hoping to rally the rural areas at the time. The attendance at these meetings was less than overwhelming. The worst was in Elko, but leaving me the Elko press to myself, I was rather concerned because I didn't want to be really bad by myself, but that didn't work out. The next morning, I was having breakfast with my husband at the Stockman's when a group of big belly, big hat ranchers walked in. They took the booth behind us and started talking about the upcoming elections. Then one of them asked, "What about all these ballot questions?" And the big voice pronounced, "You just vote no on all of them." My heart sank. I went on to expect question 7. You vote yes on that. And there was agreement all around, even there. It took thousands of volunteers, collaboration, developing empathy and patience. In the end, the Nationals came through after our victory with the money they promised. We were happy to turn it over to Planned Parenthood, and they did a wonderful job. As Louise said, when we settled on doing the initiative, it's really a win-win. If we lose, we still have Roe, and if we win, Roe goes, and if Roe goes, we are protected. I'm going to repeat that sentence again. It's really a win-win. If we lose, we still have Roe, and if we win and Roe goes, we are protected. There are things that could come down the pipe now that Roe has been overturned, but we are still better off than most. And I believe that our next step should be a national law to protect a woman's right to choose. Thank you.
Vivian, thank you so much for reading Milan's words.
My apologies, not with her gusto or sass to when she talks about her adventures in Nevada, but
it's incredible. And that needs to be somewhere documented, because that is quite a history in just 2 pages about why we are not sweating bullets here in Nevada, because we still have the right for reproductive freedom. So now I'm going to, we'll hear from Dayla Gibson. And Dayla is with Planned Parenthood. She's a native Nevadan, born and raised in Northern Nevada. While a student at Hug High School, Dayla got involved with crisis intervention work with the local crisis call center and has spent her entire career in the nonprofit world, working to make our communities safer for everyone. Another part of her life has remained constant is Planned Parenthood. She became a patient of Planned Parenthood, Marmonte, as a teenager and has utilized Planned Parenthood's health services throughout her life. In 2015, she joined the statewide Planned Parenthood organization, Planned Parenthood Votes Nevada, and in June of 26 became a director of public affairs with PPMM, Planned Parenthood Miramonte. She works closely with many community partners and coalitions to help address issues facing our communities. In her free time, and I don't know how you have any free time, Dayla, she volunteers with several organizations. She writes, she crafts, And she constantly has in her head a book. So we look forward to seeing that. And we're very lucky to have Dela. There's hardly a more knowledgeable person on this topic. So thank you for joining us, Dela.
Thank you. I do have a little PowerPoint. So I was going to talk about following up Milan and Vivian. Thank you for presenting Milan's piece. A little bit about, you know, what's happened and where that places Nevada, you know, why it matters to us. So as we know, the United States Supreme Court, the previous president kept his promise of going into office to only nominate Supreme Court justices who supported overturning Roe v. Wade. And he appointed 3 Supreme Court justices, as we all know, and they joined 3 other justices who were already on the bench and who have ruled against access to abortion in the past. And part of the, you know, other worry that we always have and the issues are that the previous administration also appointed 226 judges to our federal judiciary, and these were lifetime seats. So they all have records of, you know, indicating that reproductive rights and other vital protections are at serious risk. As has already been mentioned, Justice Thomas has said repeatedly that they should go after other rights, such as even contraceptive care, LGBTQ plus rights. He definitely is not happy that LGBTQ plus rights are, you know, have been enshrined a little bit into civil rights, things like that. And even in Nevada, Lawrence Van Dyke was appointed as a U.S. Ninth Circuit judge, which does encompass Nevada. So, you know, while we do have protections, we aren't, nothing's etched in stone, as we have found out. So the state of abortion access, right? We feel that within 3 years, there are a few states that will be safe haven states, and Nevada is one of them. And we can see already after the overturning of Roe v. Wade that there are 14 states who have banned, you know, have bans in place for abortion. And there are other states that have bans pending. The ban status is unclear, or the bans are on hold in the courts. So we definitely have a really ugly situation in our country, because basically, you know, 36 million, you know, people, nearly half of all women of reproductive age, plus trans people in our communities who can become pregnant, they've either already or will potentially lose access to abortion care. And that puts us as a safe haven state. So, you know, like I just said, we've had a lot of states that have, you know, moved to ban or reduced access to abortion care. And that's just, it's heartbreaking, because abortion care is healthcare, and it has been something that people who can give birth have utilized on different levels since the beginning of time. So the realities that we're looking at too is, you know, the people who are hurt most with these bans are people who already had barriers that were in place. You know, the majority of people who seek abortions already have children, are, you know, already understanding, you know, what it is to have a child in their life, and they're making choices that are best for them and their families. And, you know, some of the barriers, you know, they can't always find childcare to have a procedure done, taking time off of work, and you know, using, you know, funds or the time to get to places where they can access abortion to begin with prior to the bans. And then now, especially because of bans, you have people who have to travel states away and thousands of miles. So it's already impacting people that way, but also the people that are impacted the most are, you know, Black, Indigenous people of color, and of course, people who are, you know, at or below poverty level, and, don't have many resources. So it's just really helping, perpetuate a cycle of poverty. And, it's a decision, or these sorts of decisions shouldn't be made by the government. It should be made by the people that are in those situations. So, where does that leave us, right? In the past and the present. So as Vivian just talked about through Milan's words, we had question 7 that codified, Roe v. Wade in the state statute. And then in 2019, the Trust Nevada Women's Act, SB 179, there's a picture of it being signed here, was passed and signed by the governor to take some of the antiquated language out, but that doesn't mean it's all gone. We still have parental notification statute that's currently not enforced. There is currently a movement right now to get parental notification passed again. So signatures are being collected now for that to get it qualified for the ballot in 2024. We still have physicians only requirement for abortion care, which is an issue because physicians are not always available, and Nevada is 48th out of 50 in states for physician to patient care. So being able to always have a physician on site is not always possible for many organizations. And again, our Medicaid only covers abortion care in cases of rape or incest, or where a woman's life is at risk. So getting an abortion in Nevada, so basically you can't do it after 24 weeks, and some providers, depending, will stop providing abortion care before that limit. There are exceptions to 24 weeks, and that's, to save the pregnant person's life, or to, preserve their general health, and it can be mental health. There is no waiting period. We don't have that. And right now we don't have an enforced parental involvement requirement. So while we do have access to abortion care, it doesn't mean that there aren't abortion deserts. So in Reno, and so this is Planned Parenthood Marmonte's affiliate area is in northern Nevada. In Reno, our health center on 5th Street, which is celebrating its 50th year this year, being in that location, we're the only location where people can get medication abortion access. We're the only ones that provide it to the public in all of northern Nevada. So that is a lot of land, a lot of people who have to travel many hours if they're coming from, the northeastern part of the state to get abortion care. And now, especially for people who might have to come from, different parts of Utah or Idaho into our region. And so we only offer at this point medication abortion, and West End Women's Medical Group, which is also in Reno, is an in-clinic abortion procedure provider, and they do that through 17 weeks, and they are a cash-only business. There are some virtual or telehealth options, and those are, still limited in, the amount of time. A lot of people don't even know that they're pregnant when it comes to, week 8, 10, so it's not convenient for people. And so abortion support, Planned Parenthood Marmonte has a call center and a text line for people who might have questions. There is abortionfinder.org. There is a reprolegalhelpline.org. That is, a good place for people to get access to, legal issues. Are they safe to go get an abortion? What dangers do they have to look for? And then we do have abortion funds. Wild West Access Fund is the one that we are connected with most in the North. And they are a great resource for people, and they work statewide. And we do have others that are around, that do provide care, mostly in Southern Nevada. And then there are a couple national ones as well. And then, So that's basically my presentation. And I put this here because I used this from a different presentation. I forgot we were doing questions at the end. So I'm sorry, Jane, don't get angry with me. But we can't do it without you, right? We know that it doesn't begin nor end with abortion access, and a movement requires all of us. So if anybody is interested in getting involved with Planned Parenthood, Marmonte, please feel free to reach out to me. We do have Marmonte Mondays, which is on this side, yes, that I am advertising, and that's every other Monday. So we just had one this last Monday where we talked about voting rights in the country and the history of voting rights, because the 19th Amendment's anniversary is coming up. But we cover different topics every week, and we it's completely C3. We are a nonpartisan, non-political organization with Planned Parenthood Marmonte, but it's a good place if you're interested in getting some more information on what's happening in the, in our community and in our state and nation on abortion, or not just abortion, but in repro healthcare and different topics like that. So we have themes, and we're looking at also meeting for boba. So that is a really great thing. So there you go.
All right. Wow. That was quite an evening. We did a little bit of a fire hose of information for all of you. Jackie, I want to bring you on very quickly. Dela, thank you to all of our speakers. My goodness. I want to thank you for so many things. And I sent them the impossible task with a very detailed agenda, like 6:10 to 6:16. And they actually all kept to their 5 minutes, which never happens. So speakers, thank you for keeping your remarks succinct, but very on target. And Jackie, there's so much information here. I'm guessing some of our audience might want the information in the chat or the PowerPoints. How do we do that?
We will figure out a way. We'll get a copy of the chat and we'll put all those on our website. Just give me a minute. It'll probably, let's say by tomorrow, we'll have it on our website.
Okay, super. So there were a couple of questions that came in earlier, and there might be a few more, but here's the ones I found. From Sarah Mahler, she asks, are there any organized efforts against either of the ballot questions that we heard about tonight? So I'll turn that over to either Senator Spearman or Assemblywoman Spiegel, or even our community activists who might know.
So I'll start and say, we may not know, we may not see the organized activity against it, but trust me, as we get closer to November, we will begin to see the furor, F-U-R-O-R. And so we have to be diligent right now and make sure we shore up the votes. Again, if the amendments fail, it'll be another 5 to 7 years before they can come back again to be voted on.
Thank you. Does anybody else know about any other opposition to these two ballot questions?
So I don't know if a specific organized effort. I do know that when the hearing was held in the Senate to pass this last time, it went late into the night. And for hours, people expounded on the evils of adding this to the Nevada Constitution. And I remember very clearly that as it was getting hot, I think the air conditioner in the building was off. Senator Spearman opened the door and in came in a gush of fresh air, and she went right up to the testimony and brought us back to reality from the fantasy land of the chaos and fall of all humankind that would ensue if we pass this. So I don't know if they're organized, but they're certainly out there.
And I would agree with that, and also just add that I would not be surprised if they weren't used as get out the vote tactics.
Right. I would expect that too. Dr. Cosgrove, Sandra just put in the Chambers of Commerce are on the record that they do not want the minimum wage put into the Constitution. And they have some deep pockets. So I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot of ads, as Senator Spearman said, as we get closer, about the sky will fall if we do this. And as we heard from Audrey, $12 is not the sky and it's barely livable. Somebody else put a comment in there that we really need $24 an hour to even be somewhat reasonable. So let's see, Rabbi Myra Soifer said, even though the legislature could still raise the minimum wage, if a certain wage amount is put in the Constitution, won't that make it more likely that they won't? I guess that they won't raise the minimum wage. So Ellen, what do you say about that? Or Senator Spearman, or even Sandra? What's your prediction?
Well, the thing is that what's happened in the past is that people who don't want to raise the minimum wage have pointed to the cost of living provision that's in there and said, well, this can just happen pretty much automatically through the regulatory process and the labor commissioner. And it just hasn't happened. And even there, like, it's capped at 3%. So we need to do something to make sure that a future legislature doesn't then undo what's already been done.
And to your point, Ellen, I want to say it was 2017. One was bought in 2013, my first session. One of my colleagues on the other side bought an amendment to take out the minimum wage altogether and leave it up to employers as to what to do. So the threat of undoing this is a lot greater than the fears of what will happen if we do. Because at some point in the future, there will be another legislator who feels that $12 an hour is not something that we should be pushing for the workers in Nevada.
Right. And just following up on what Senator Spearman is saying, just last session, a bill was introduced to repeal AB 456. It went nowhere. It didn't have a hearing, but that's just because of the makeup of the legislature. If you have different players like we had in 2015, you can have very different outcome.
There's no rest for the weary. There's always something coming up, and that's just the message to stay involved, stay in touch with our legislators. There's no place like Nevada that I know of where I can call Senator Spearman or Assemblywoman Spiegel, and they'll take my call and they'll get on our panel. I mean, our legislators are so incredible and they're so accessible. So you want to stay in touch and find out what's happening. And if we blink, something can get taken away. But we have an opportunity right now to do two amazing things. And Dela presented us with so many wonderful ideas. And Dela, can we distribute that PowerPoint? Is that something that would be okay to our listeners?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Get you a PDF of it.
Okay, great. Somebody did ask if this presentation will be available. Yes, it will. It always takes us longer than we hope to edit and finalize these, but as soon as it's done, it will be on our website, and hopefully we can send it to everybody who attended tonight. Let me see, there are some other questions I want to go through. Maybe we'll go a little casual because we've got plenty of time. If somebody just wants to speak and ask a question, go ahead while I look through what's in the chat. No questions?
I wanted to make a comment, Jane. This is Rayona Sharpnack.
Oh, thanks, Rayona.
Yeah, I did put it in the chat, but I just think it's really important that we have to get on top of messaging and creativity when it comes to educating the public and recruiting their engagement. And it just feels like, when you get around the election cycle, there's all these want, them versus us, ads and stuff that I think just turns people away. And I'd like to see, some engagement from students from UNR, UNLV, other creative schools to say, if they believe in whatever cause you're pitching, how would you go about this? Just to get a lot more fresh engagement from younger folks. And, failure's not an option here. So we got to use everybody. That's what I wanted to say.
Thank you so much, Rayona. And Rayona heads up a Women's Leadership Institute. Am I remembering the name right?
Yeah.
And coaches women at the executive level. And she's also from here and quite an athlete, professional softball player, and my coach from 7th grade. Volleyball. And we won all the county championships because she's such an amazing coach. Any other questions? Let's just open it up. We've got about 10 minutes left, and we'd love to hear your questions. And we might have worn you out because that was a lot of information.
Well, clearly, I think we need to do a write-up of everything that's come before. I think that's part of what inspires and empowers us, especially with opening this workshop with Zoe at the beginning. It certainly fired me up, followed by everyone else. And then to really get talking to people and putting ourselves out there. I think during the pandemic, a lot of us, I'm certainly guilty of this, have pulled back a little bit, but tell people how important it is, whatever they think of the midterms, even if they were just motivated to get themselves to the polls or get their ballot in because of the 2 questions, that would be enough. If we lose our place in the queue, everything, as you saw, takes years to build, years to pass the first step, the second step, the third step. We cannot go backwards. So we're headed into a cliff, and we have to cross to the other side without falling down. And we need to create that sense amongst everyone we know that they must get themselves to the polls.
And if I can, I just want to say something that Jerry and I have been talking about for a long time. We cannot rest just in the presidential years. We have to be vigilant every election, every office, every time, up and down the ballot, because some of the people that wind up at the top of the ticket are the people who started at school board. And if we're not paying attention, then we wind up in places where we say, oh, wait a minute, now we got to fight real hard to get this or to keep this. So we want to make sure we do that. And the other thing I will say is we have to pay attention to judges. We have to pay attention to judges because they rise from JP all the way to the Supreme Court. And the midterms matter because if John Danforth had not been reelected in 1982, when Harriet Woods ran against him, had she prevailed, we wouldn't have Clarence Thomas. Just keep that in mind. 1982 was a midterm election. And if Harriet Woods had prevailed, we would not have Clarence Thomas.
Yeah, it's so significant. I know my big takeaway tonight is it's just a lot of rolling up our sleeves, a lot of work. Our legislators can't do this work without the activists in the room to lift them up and to help them get the word out. So I just encourage all of you. It's August, you get another week or 2 off, and then we hit the ground. And we've got to start letting people know about these issues. We hope that you'll share this presentation once it's available. I see a lot of comments in the chat that folks do want to share this. And this night, to me, I have been so excited. It really is a night for the history books. I mean, we have some speakers here that you will not find on one panel. And we're just so grateful to all of our presenters for being here tonight, for your hard work over lifetimes, your eloquence and your passion. And we stand on your shoulders. So thank you so much. Are there any other questions before I do a 1 or 2 little sign-offs?
So Jane, this is Jerry Burton. I just wanted to mention when Senator Spearman was talking, it reminded me we're hearing a lot from students at the colleges and professors wanting to learn more about the ERA, the state ERA. So that's really encouraging. When we first spoke about it at one of the rallies recently for reproductive rights, that it was crickets. They didn't know what we were talking about. So the good news is they're hearing about it and they're reaching out to us to get people into the classroom and teach about the ERA. And I think that's encouraging.
Excellent. And I know that Dr. Sandra Cosgrove did an excellent presentation that's only like a half hour and with slides and amazing history of the ERA. So that's something that we can share out as well. So glad to hear that they're interested. Thank goodness. Okay, any other questions for our wonderful panelists? Okay, so
Jane,
next
Jane,
month. Hmm?
This Rayona, you may be going to do this, but I don't want to get off the call without thanking the men and male allies that are on this call,
Thank you.
being tech support, just standing arm in arm with us every day, and make sure that we always include them in our acknowledgements.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Rayona, for sharing that. That is absolutely true. We're stronger, as Audrey said, we're stronger when we work together. And even though we called this What Women Want, I believe after we've heard from our panelists, it's what everybody wants. They're human rights, and we need to take care of each other. And thanks to Jackie for so much leadership in getting this organization going. Jackie was on a well-deserved vacation, and I bothered her sadly almost every day of it, saying, Jackie, how do I do this? And how do I do that? And she so kindly every evening, because she was on European time, would get right back to me. And that's why we have tonight happening, because of her prowess and Wes's prowess helping us with tech. We do run on a shoestring budget. And we don't have a lot of expenses, but we'd like to be able to pay our tech people and a few other things. So I'm going to put our donation link in here. If you're able to chip in 10, 15 bucks, anything helps us. We don't need a lot, but it really makes a difference so that we can keep doing these forums for you. So it took a village. Thanks to everybody who's here, our women, trans, male allies, to our legislators, to our longtime activists. What a wonderful evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And can I just say, Jane, wow, thank you so much for putting this together. You brought together such an amazing panel to talk about such incredibly important things. So go, Jane. Thank you.
Thank you. It was fun. We're lucky. We live in a great state where we can do this and have the right people. So thanks, everybody. Have a great evening. Enjoy summer and get ready to hit the doors come mid-September or October. We need to let people know about these initiatives, especially.
Hit the doors now.